Hello, everyone, and welcome to YB Davidson Reading Room. Thank you for joining us. The YB Davidson Reading Room features excerpts from books written by unpublished authors. So if there is anyone listening and you've written a book and wish your book to be featured, please let me know through the comments section. There are many talented writers out there that, for one reason or another, publishers ignore. So here at YB Davidson Reading Room, we would like to feature those talented writers and let you, the listener, decide. Let's get comfy, and I hope you enjoy listening as we will begin with a novel titled Every Day is a Gift, which is based on a true unsolved murder case. It was a crisp December morning in a picturesque town when in 24 hours a crime will occur that will change one family forever, shock the world, and capture the attention of millions for decades to come. Jason sat just 48 hours after Christmas Day waiting for the police briefing that was to begin shortly. Jason Chandler, who is a journalist from New York, was in Colorado visiting friends over the Christmas holidays when he received the call from the news desk to cover what would in the future become one of the most famous unsolved murders of modern times. Waiting gave him time to reflect that just 48 hours earlier he was stamping his feet in an effort to keep warm while waiting in the cold, crisp winter's night outside the residence of the city's latest murder victim. When he first arrived on scene, he knew few details about what had occurred, only that a possible murder involving a wealthy family. Reflecting back now, he had a sick feeling while the hair stood up on the back of his neck as he recalled how watching in shock as he did not expect to see the tiny body bag atop the gurney. It seemed surreal as the bright light cast by the full moon seemed to light the way for the coroner's attendants as they wheeled the gurney towards the van. The attendants placed the gurney with the tiny body bag atop into the coroner's van and whisked it away for an autopsy to be performed the next day. Jason at the time had no idea of the horror the autopsy would reveal about the last moments of the young girl's life. It was now more than 20 years since the murder occurred and still unsolved. There were multiple reasons why the horrific murder remained unsolved. Tainted investigation from the beginning, tainted crime scene, tunnel vision by the first officers and investigators to arrive on scene, copious amounts of false information given to the public by the police, the press, and anyone else who could get in front of a camera or in print, just to list a few. That cold winter night still haunted Jason. It is why he decided to contact Declan, his classmate and friend from Oxford University in England, as Declan had been working for Scotland Yard since graduation. Jason thought if Declan would review all the information that Jason had accumulated over the years about the case, maybe Declan could offer his professional opinion and potentially pave the way to solve the case. Jason felt he should at least try to find the answers, as the victim's family has suffered enormously through the years, and the case had always haunted him. Declan, feeling very content with life, sitting on the back porch of his oceanfront summer home in the historic town of Brighton. Brighton is a beautiful, quintessential English seaside town, popular with Brits and tourists for the cozy shops on the bustling high street, all the rides, the arcades, and the sandy beach. As Declan sat drinking his morning coffee, looking up at the bright blue sky, with not a whisper of a cloud to be seen, filled with golden sunlight that reflected on the water where the ocean waves gently rolled towards the soft sandy beach, was comforting to Declan. At 6 feet tall, Declan, an heir with no spare, was fortunate to have inherited the family's traditional blonde hair, chiseled good looks from his father's side, and from his mother he inherited her sparkling deep blue eyes that made almost every woman he met melt in his presence. It was very surprising to all who met him, with his wealth, family connections, trust fund, his Oxford and Cambridge degrees, that Declan was a Scotland Yard Assistant Commissioner. It was Declan's diverse upbringing, in addition to his charming ways, that gave him the unique ability to read people and situations so accurately. Declan was by no means perfect. He was a bit of a fusspot, with real undercurrent of energy and determination always bubbling just below the surface. He was a devil's in the details man, which at times drove his team at the yard to the brink. But this strategy always brought the team success. With this thought in mind, he looked over at the wicker sofa at his faithful companion, a toffee-colored English bulldog named Wiggins. Wiggins, who was unaware of his master's gaze, was happily sound asleep, snoring so loudly as to almost drown out the sound of the waves crashing at the shore of the sandy beach. Looking next to sleeping Wiggins, Declan looked at the box on the table in front of the wicker sofa. The large benign-looking box with its clear packing tape and shipping labels affixed to it gave the impression of mundane contents. However, inside were flash drives, paper files, and notes detailing the investigation into the murder of a precious little girl who was murdered in the basement of her family home in the United States. Declan's investigative reporter friend, Jason, from the United States, was going to write a book about the unsolved murder case in the hopes of generating interest to revive the investigation, to hopefully get justice for the murder victim's long-suffering family. Jason had sent the materials and asked Declan to review the case and advise him on any new leads or conclusions as to the direction the case should go to find the murderer or murderers. Declan was on holidays at his seaside home, which was the perfect place to concentrate. Declan was always up for a challenge, but little did he know what a true test of his skill and ability this challenging case would be. He went to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee, then went back out to the porch, picked up the file labeled Family Background, sat down, and began to read, first about the father. The victim's father, Jack, was a well-educated man with a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Michigan. In the 60s, Jack also served as an officer in the Navy Civil Engineer Corps in the Philippines for 3 years and an additional 8 years in the Atlanta Reserve. While at university, Jack met Cindy, whom he would marry in the mid-60s. Together they would have 2 daughters, Linda, Liza, and 1 son, Arthur. Over time, the couple grew apart, and after 12 years of marriage, divorced in the late 70s. Cindy and Jack parted on very amicable terms, and to this day, Cindy still speaks of Jack fondly. When Jack met Paula, it was love at first sight. Paula, at just 23 years old, was much younger than Jack. She was well educated in the late 70s with a degree in journalism from the University of West Virginia. A former beauty queen, she was confident, friendly, outgoing, and the opposite of Jack, who was hardworking, but like most people who are engineers, more analytical and slightly self-contained, which made them an excellent match, each balancing the other. Their opposite strengths would carry them through some of the most difficult challenges any couple could face. Yet through it all, their strength and belief in each other was formidable. And amazingly, they survived as a couple throughout their tragic life with such poise and grace. Paul and Jack were married in the early 80s in Atlanta, Georgia. Jack started a computer service company from the basement of their Atlanta home. Eventually, with the assistance of Paula's father with mergers and acquisitions, the business became a success. During this time, Jack and Paula welcomed a son, Brad, then 3 years later, a daughter, Tricia. Jack wanted to expand the business, so in the early 90s, Jack relocated the family and the business to Colorado. Jack and Paula purchased a 15-room home which was built in the late 1920s in what they thought was a safe Colorado neighborhood. Paula went about to supervise the renovations of their new home while Jack continued to grow the business. They were well liked, had many friends, and entertained often. Brad and Tricia's friends and the neighborhood kids were welcome to come and go as they liked. These were happy times for the family. The first tragedy would strike in the early 90s. The beloved eldest daughter of Jack and his ex-wife Cindy was a passenger in her boyfriend's car when it collided with a van in Chicago. At only 22 years old, Linda and her boyfriend died in the collision. As any parent can imagine, the grief was overwhelming. The thought of losing a child so young with their whole life ahead of them, and there was nothing you could do to prevent what happened. Jack began reading self-help books on ways to cope with grief, channeling his grief into growing his business and continuing to being an exceptional father to his four remaining children. By this time, Jack and Paula had been married for 12 years. Losing Linda was just as difficult for Paula as she loved Jack's children from his first marriage as if they were her own. During this difficult time, Paul supported Jack, plus continued to volunteer at both Brad's and Trisha's schools, entertain friends, family, and create a warm and happy life for their family. Just 1 year after the tragic loss of Jack's eldest daughter in a car accident, the second tragedy would strike. Paula was diagnosed with an aggressive form of ovarian cancer that had spread to her lymph nodes. What a shock! Paula, at only 36 years old with two young children to raise, with her loving husband Jack by her side, once again they together would fight this unseen demon known as cancer with the same strength and determination as they did with their grief a year earlier with the loss of Jack's eldest daughter, Linda. Just 3 years later, on Christmas night, the third tragedy would strike with the ferocity and destruction of a Category 5 hurricane, constantly picking up speed as the story unfolds with the potential to shatter the lives of Jack and Paula's family. Declan realized after reading the family history that this is what people would consider a typical, successful upper middle class American family. However, this middle class family had been touched by and suffered through more tragedy than the average family. First, the elder daughter's death in a car accident, then the mother Paula's cancer, and now the youngest daughter's murdered. Declan was curious to read on to determine why the police focused on the parents to the point of obsession, it seemed from Jason's notes. Declan rose, went to the kitchen to get another cup of coffee. Upon his return, looking over at the sofa, he laughed as he watched Wiggins sleeping soundly, snoring loudly and peacefully, without a care in the world in the bright sunlight. After reading the family history file filled with tragedy, it was comforting to Declan hearing Wiggins snoring loudly, and he thought how great it would be if everyone in the world could feel so safe and secure. Declan settled in to continue next with the events leading up to the night of the murder. We're going to leave it there today, so I hope you enjoyed the excerpt from the book titled Every Day is a Gift. If you are interested in reading about what happens next, please let me know in the comments section. I look forward to reading all your comments. Please leave your feedback in the comments section and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It's free. I hope you will join me for the next episode where we will read an excerpt from the book titled What the Jury Got Wrong. Until then, always remember, every day is a gift.